Hello, I'm Dennis McCuistion, and today you're going to get perspectives from someone I've interviewed decades ago and who needs no introduction, but hey, I'm going to introduce him anyway. Steve Forbes is the chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media, the publisher of Forbes magazine and Forbes.com. He ran for president of the United States twice and is an advocate of the flat tax, sound money, and limited government. He's written several books, including one on money and how the destruction of the dollar is impacting the global economy. Now, one of his latest efforts is Steve Forbes On Achievement, an educational video series produced in partnership with isit.org and provided to thousands of teachers and students around the country. We're going to discuss innovation and entrepreneurship, and yes, how stories can inspire all of us to achieve more for ourselves and those we associate with. Steve, welcome to the program.
Dennis, good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. And you are, in my mind, sort of Mr. Innovation, Mr. Entrepreneurship since I've known you. So give that viewer some sense of why you think that whole concept is so important to the future of America.
It's how we get a higher standard of living. And it comes from people doing things, big things, small things, whether it's what they call the learning curve. We make small changes each day, getting better and better, called productivity, or the big things like we see what's happening in the internet and other major things that have changed our lives. And so that's how we move ahead. And it comes from people from the most unlikely backgrounds, whether rich, poor, in between, people who may stumble into something because something happens. We have a story, for example, in the series of Margaret Rudkin. Back in the 1930s, she had three kids, but one of them had health problems, including an inability to eat processed bread. And she heard that maybe some kind of wheat might help, so she experimented in creating a bread with the wheat. She had her own formulas, her own recipes. Was said her first efforts were like stones that came out of the oven, but eventually she invented modern whole wheat bread.
Really?
And so the kid could eat it. Her physician was impressed. He told other doctors, hey, you should try this bread as well. She soon found herself in the bread business, and she decided to name it after the farm she lived on, which was Pepperidge Farm.
You're kidding.
And so, then she went to Europe, found a great chocolatier in Belgium. That's how we got Malone cookies and other cookies like that. She goes to Switzerland, and we get goldfish crackers. And so, but that wasn't planned. That wasn't a central planner. That wasn't somebody saying down, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Something that just happened. And that's how big things can happen. It's not always planned, and seemingly simple things. For example, there's a fellow we highlight called Garrett Morgan. And he loved to tinker, invent things, but he invented the three-way traffic signal before there was just stop and go. And when you had both horses and cars, and this is over a century ago,
right.
He had accidents coming to the intersection. He saw a terrible accident and wondered why there wasn't a warning before either start to slow down. And so this is before they had electronics, so he invented this three-signal thing. Of course, today we have red, amber, and green. Wow. So it's people doing seemingly simple things, big things, like the invention of the boxes, they call it, containers. That looks simple, but took a lot of work in terms of devising the thing. Malcolm McLean was a truck driver from North Carolina and wondered why, in the name of efficiency, you couldn't put the truck on a freighter.
Right.
And so eventually he came up with a box and took...
Now let me stop you right there. About what year was that, do you recall?
That was in the 1950s.
Oh, really?
And at the time, shipping was very expensive.
Sure.
Because of back-breaking labor. You had to put things physically on the ship, take them off, a lot of breakage, a lot of pilferage. Right. And so when the box came along, it cut shipping costs by as much as 95%.
Wow.
And allowed the global supply chains that made possible handhelds. And so these things happen. A trucker, a housewife, and big things, a guy who's a tinkerer. Wow. Big things that profoundly and positively change our lives. And that's what you want, is have the atmosphere where people like that can rise up, try things out, and we end up benefiting.
Wow, those are amazing stories. And so, but also about those stories, Steve, I would say most of those people watching this program didn't know about these people. Am I right about that?
That's right, and that's why we focused in this series on people most people haven't heard of, but people who made profound changes. And we do it in the way of stories. And so it's not just not enough to say somebody, oh, free markets are good, we like capitalism, all that. But stories get a point across. And that's what so we have a free market lesson with each of these stories, 3 or 4 minutes. So people are interested. We learn from stories. We should learn that from the Bible. Stories make a point.
Well, stories, you're right, always make a point. And that's one of the great things about being able to do it on video so that you can share those stories with somebody else. It's a real shame that some of those people you were talking about couldn't have been captured on video like this at the time, really talking about how they did it and all that. But you have become sort of the storyteller to tell about what was going on. And one of the things that has been so impressive to me about what you've done is you are always, I mean, you and I both know all the economic challenges in the world, but you're the most positive guy I know about that. I can lapse into cynicism about all this stuff, oh, woe is me stuff, but you're so positive about this. Why is that?
Because it's people. People can create problems, people can uncreate problems. And so we've had challenges in this country before. It doesn't mean we'll continue to do it. So I don't want to be Pollyannish and say, oh, everything's going to be nice. But we've been through terrible periods. In the 1890s, people wondered where this country was going. 1930s, Great Depression. 1970s, when we had this terrible inflation, America looked like it was declined. Malaise was the word of the day. And in a period in recent times when it looks like we're not growing very well. We had a bout of inflation. Bad guys are rising up in the world. But those things in an entrepreneurial society, it's not that you don't make mistakes, but in a free society you can correct things. You can, you're much less brittle than other countries that get overregulated, get stuck in their ways. You look at Europe today. Why Europe, the European Union, thing as big as, almost big as the United States, why is our growth rate about 50% higher? Why of the 50 top tech companies in the world, only 4 come from Europe? Why is it that the top companies in Europe, most came around, were brought into existence around 1911, 110 years ago, 20 years ago. In the United States, it's 1980s.
Well,
Continuing new companies.
All right, so as
Remember
you know,
when growing up when Google was a number?
Oh my gosh, when Google, well, so I had the opportunity in the 90s, Steve, to interview 3 very impressive people. 1 was the father of the internet, 2 was the inventor of the World Wide Web, and 3 was a guy running for president, a guy by the name of Steve Forbes in 1996. So there we are, 3 important people. Now, I must say, the father of the internet and the inventor of the World Wide Web, neither was Al Gore. So I just want you to know that. But Vint Cerf, as you know, went to work for Google later, still works, I think, for Google. And that kind of innovation that you're talking about is amazing. Now, I live in Europe, and I can tell you one reason why it's not the same as here, because it's the environment that's created. The issues of unions are very too strong, in my opinion, and entrepreneurship is not rewarded. You can't
You're
fire
so
and,
right.
yeah.
It's a culture risk averse.
Right.
Always looking for what can go wrong.
Right.
Don't do anything unless
Right.
we've done everything to analyze it.
Right.
And then what makes things happen in this country, people just go and do it. You know, Alexis Tocqueville, when he visited this country back in the 18th, from France.
Yes, he was.
Was stunned by what he called voluntary associations,
Yes.
people voluntarily coming together for a shared purpose, whether it was building a hospital, a sports team, solving a problem, having a culture, whatever. And people just did it. In Europe, by contrast, you either were told what to do or you sought permission. So everything was a slower pace.
Right.
Whereas here, people just went out and did it.
Well, how much of that do you think, you mentioned culture, which is true, but one of the things I love about being in Europe is to be able to see all of the historical stuff, all the culture around the ruins, the castles, all this sort of thing. But do you think because that's been built in for so many, obviously millennia, versus a new world here of 200 or 300 years ago, does that have something to do with it, or what do you think?
It's strange because the Industrial Revolution rose up in England.
In England, yeah.
And Europe was once the dynamic part of the world. They ended up conquering the world for good or for ill.
Right.
And railroads were all over the place. Factories were rising up. So profound change. And that kind of, you still didn't have in Europe the kind of free-for-all that we had here. And in England, the government there, by standards of the time, was kind of loose. And so people like Newcomen and Watts and others could tinker, do things. And the thing about innovation is not just one person. Who, for example, invented the automobile? There is no one.
Right.
Who invented the computer? Well, this person did this person did that.
Right.
But people are doing things, improving things. After all, the railroad came out of the coal mines when they're trying to find better ways to get the coal out of the mines. So they tried rails, then the steam engine, been in the early 1700s, trying to perfect that. So all this stuff comes from constant experimentation. And a good example is next year we're going to celebrate our 250th birthday. And what was amazing about British North America was that British colonial policy was sort of slipshod. Sometimes onerous, sometimes they just, we just went and did
looked the other
our own
way.
thing.
Right.
The amazing thing was each of the 13 colonies had their own assembly. You had, they chose representatives, and you had much more voting here than you did in England. For example, most of the colonies, 4 out of 6 men, non-slave men, white men, could vote. In England, it was 2 out of 6. In the colonies, or in England, 2 out of 10 men owned property. In America, 7 out of 10 men owned land.
Wow.
So by the time things started to stir with what they called the 7 Years' War in the 1760s, which led the Brits to try to tax us, which we saw the consequences of that. But the thing is, by the 1760s, British North America's population was approaching 2.5 million. French North America, which was very rigid, very tightly controlled from Paris, 60,000.
Wow. Wow.
So you could see
the
where things were going.
The difference is there. Well, look, I didn't wear my Forbes tie today. I have one, thanks to you, from the past, but I did wear my Declaration of Independence tie here. So when all of these things, political things, got going back in those days, changed everything in some ways. But I think you sort of look at innovation, entrepreneurship, even going back in those days. Am I right?
Yes. Look at Ben Franklin. Personalizes the American can-do. Improve yourself. You're not constrained by where you're born. Keep trying to do better things each day. Very, very American characteristic. Things don't just stay the same. And back then, if you were unhappy, you just went up and moved elsewhere, moved out west. So this constant desire to improve, the idea that you are free to control your own lives. Until modern times, the only government agency people had any contact with was the post office until the late 1800s.
That's changed a little bit, shall we say, Steve?
Yes.
Changed a little bit. So let me ask.
But I think that spirit is still there, and
right.
That's what gives me hope that, especially with the younger people, we have a feature in our magazine, Forbes Media, called 30 Under 30, events each year. People under the age of 30 people in 20
right.
different categories of high tech, cooking, whatever, who are achieving great things.
Right.
And so I think that part of characteristic in America we must make sure we allow to happen is aspirational. You can do it too.
Right. Well, this series that you're doing for isit.org, this Steve Forbes on Achievement, you talk about stories, and you try to make sure that even with the obstacles, in some cases there's government obstacles, some cases it's just size obstacles, some cases it may be, let's just say cultural obstacles or even economic issues. But that idea of you can do it, and the positive thing, I mean, as I mentioned at the beginning, you've always been that guy. How did you get that way, for goodness sake?
Well, I always was interested in history. I was always interested in, I guess, growing up in a publishing family, curiosity, what makes things work, why things went well, why things didn't go well. When I was in grade school, I did news sheets from time to time for my classmates. I got in trouble once when I'd want to do a grade my teachers. I thought if they grade me, I should be able to grade them. No.
As a former college professor, I can tell you that does happen, so there we are.
It eventually did happen.
Right.
But I think what the whole human experience is, for all the terrible things that have happened, people can find a way if they're allowed to move ahead. And Tom Sowell, the great economist, likes to ask, what is the difference between us today and people in the Stone Age? Same human bodies, same resources, same planet, and the difference between them and us is information. We have more information, more knowledge that we can bring to bear. And so they couldn't do the exploitation of resources. They just didn't have the knowledge to do it. So you see it especially in healthcare. And so we have an environment where people can create new knowledge, preserve old knowledge, create new knowledge. You can move ahead. And you look at the state of Israel. In a desert, water is not abundance there, but with desalination, high tech, drip technology and everything, their use of water is not much above overall what it was 75 years ago.
Right. Well, you mentioned that idea of education, basically, and what you're trying to do with this series, but what you're trying to do really with your life, and when you talk to people, is to make sure that people have a good, positive attitude about it. But all this knowledge and education, how important is that to make sure that we continue to innovate?
Well, young people, kids, love stories. They learn from them. And so as you try to make sense of the world, you want something, what do I look at? What's out there? And that's why it's we think these stories convey principles like free markets without preaching.
Right.
People pick it up, and because there's a variety of people, and because some of these people succeeded and then failed, success isn't forever. Right. We hope to inspire them, curiosity, and these people did it from all sorts of different backgrounds, obstacles and opportunities, seeing opportunities. One of the people we're doing in season 3 is John Deere, who came out of New England, and back then, in the 1830s, 1840s, the Midwest was not very good for agriculture because of the nature of the soil on traditional plows. The gooky soil stuck on the plow, so every few feet you had to stop and scrape the stuff off. And he came up with a new plow using a material that actually he was inspired by his mother, a certain kind of needle that she used, that make a new kind of plow, new material, where the soil didn't stick and turn what looked like a very unpromising area for ag into a breadbasket of the world.
Wow. Wow. Well, we have a lot of yellow and green in France, I can tell you that, right down the street from us. In fact, the only traffic jams I get into are tractors and cows, so that's kind of where I am. These stories that you told, and you've got other ones, I want you to share those other ones in just a minute, but there's a lady named Helen Hayes who died many years ago, but you remember the actress. I'm not sure if that person is old enough to remember who Helen Hayes was. But Helen Hayes told this story, and it's great for your stories. She was talking to her mother one day, and she was just saying to her mother, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my life, etc., but I'm thinking maybe I want to be in films or whatever, and I want to be a success, in whatever I do. And her mother said, Helen, let me tell you something. There is a difference between achievement and success. She said, if you set your goals of what you want to do, let's say you want to invent this new bread or the whatever, and you achieve that goal, you make something happen, it's a service to other people, etc. That is the key thing. You have achieved that. Success is when other people recognize your achievement. And that's nice, but it's the achievement itself that's important. So I think those stories that you're talking about, a lot of people never heard of those people, but they achieved all that, and now look what's happened for everybody else by the fact that their success was not recognized.
Well, there's so many people who've done so many extraordinary things. one of the people we're going to be doing is a fellow named Frederick Arnold, who, among other, after the war, he was a war hero.
What was his name?
Frederick Arnold.
Frederick Arnold?
And again, nobody knows him. Back in those days, when you went to the beach, what did you do when you go to the beach? You'd take a towel, or you'd lug one of these wooden chairs to sit on the beach. And he took an industrial product, material, aluminum, and decided since it was light, he invented the folding aluminum chair that is a mainstay. And again, something seemingly so simple, he turned it into something that all of us take for granted and made going to the beach fun instead of lugging this stuff around.
Well, you have stories like that, and so just share more of them, and particularly any that have had just sort of a lasting impact on you.
Well, I think several stick in mind. I've mentioned some of them. One is Annie Malone. Back in the 1870s, she was a daughter of former slaves, and she had an interest in chemistry. And this again gets to why you can't plan these things. How would a girl with a background like that and a sickly child develop an interest in chemistry? And so she developed hair products that made her eventually, she started a company. This is a time when racism was far worse than it is today, and women couldn't vote. She established an international company selling these hair products door to door before Avon, and at one point she had 75,000 agents around the world.
Holy Toledo.
And she had owned a whole block in Chicago, which she called the Poro College, where people learned in, and this gets to corporate culture, certain things you do if you're working for me in terms of how you comport yourself and sell these things. So she became a millionaire, first black millionaire, and today she'd be a billionaire. So, so something like that, how in the world do you do that in the environment in which she lived? And the key thing is she was providing something that somebody else needed. This gets the essence of capitalism, of free markets. You succeed by providing something that somebody else might want. And you have to persuade them that this is something they should have. So she's one. Another one is A.P. Giannini, a banker.
Well, he's the guy I know well because I'm a recovering banker myself, Steve. So tell that person watching who A.P. Giannini was in the Bank of Italy and what it became.
Well, A.P. Giannini was originally he was son of immigrants from Italy. In the time, Northern California was having a whole flow of immigrants from all around the world. And he was a fruit broker, and he was on a bank board, savings bank. And at the age of 30, he decided he had made his fortune. And he said to the bank, there's this whole community out there of people that are not served by banks. In those days, banks only served the well-to-do.
Of course, right.
And the bank said, "Are you out of your mind? We don't know these people, and so you're nuts." Well, he left the bank board, started his own bank, as you mentioned, Bank of Italy, and he made loans of small denominations at reasonable rates of interest. He invented consumer banking. He did branch banking. He did advertising in the different languages of these
right.
communities. Mortgages and the like, and he also helped finance the wine industry in California, Hollywood in its early days when other banks wouldn't touch it. So we got MGM, Fox, Columbia were all financed. He saved Walt Disney from bankruptcy in the 1930s.
Really? I'd forgotten that. Wow.
When Disney was making Snow White, the first feature-length cartoon, so to speak, and was way over budget. And Disney was going broke, and Giannini was the only one who'd lend him the money to complete the project. So Giannini, to me, exemplified taking a traditional industry, expanding it in a way, servicing and bringing millions of people in who had been excluded. And this gets to something about true free markets, is eventually they will always turn scarcity into abundance. What is something that for the few becomes something for the many. And one story on Giannini was in 1906, he operated
some sort of an earthquake going on, as I recall, in California.
Yes. And he had the presence of mind when the tremors started, and they stopped, and he realized the fires were coming.
Right.
So he took couple of wagons. In those days, money was physical. So
Right.
he put the gold, the cash on the wagons covered with fruit, went out of the city. The fires came because he realized that with the fires, bank vaults would be melted shut.
Right.
And so when the fires started to abate, he went to back to San Francisco, went on the waterfront, set up a table, put the cash out, and said, "We're starting to rebuild the city." And so we mentioned Bank of Italy.
Yeah.
He decided to buy a branch.
What did the name become?
Well, he bought a bank in Los Angeles called Bank of America, a small one.
Yeah.
Decided to change the name of his bank to Bank of America.
Right.
Made it the largest, at the time, the largest bank in the world.
Yeah. Well, that is such a great story. And I say for those of us who are recovering bankers, the thing about the earthquake and the fires in 1906 is a story we'll never forget. But I bet you there's not anybody watching this program who's ever heard that story for sure. But what he did was so important. I was in a meeting in Dallas earlier this week, and a banker that I'd known casually for a long time came up to me. I was presenting on something different, but he came over and I said, "Bob, I said, how are things, the banking business from your standpoint?" He said, "Dennis, they're no fun anymore. They're no fun. There's so many regulations. There's so many things that we can't do." He said, "In the old days," he said, "you and I used to look somebody in the eye and how we could
What
judge
Morgan
their character."
called character.
Exactly right. How we could judge their character was an important thing. And now it seems like, that's become over-regulated and everything. Am I missing something there?
You have to paper everything over. So banks today almost seem they have to hire more compliance officers than loan officers.
Exactly right.
And once upon a time, the biggest source of startup money was the local bank.
Right.
Regulators won't let that happen anymore, and then regulators get upset. "Oh, look at all this new credit, non-bank credit entities rising up."
Right.
Well, guess what? When
Guess
you
what?
throttle one, something's going to try to move into its place. Hello.
No question. Well, Steve, we're out of time, but thank you so much, not only for being here, but for everything you've done in your life and continue to do at places like Freedom Fest, other places, and isit.org. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
And I think you may feel as I do, that overwhelmed sort of with Steve's energy and passion and these inspirational stories. And hopefully you'll follow Steve and us on social media. And we do thank you for watching as we continue to talk about things that matter with people who care.